How are you? Is Dr. Almoso. We want to talk about missionary activities in Zimbabwe. We want to talk about the successes and the failures of these missionaries in Zimbabwe. Were they successful preaching about the gospel? Did they fail preaching about the gospel? That is what we want to talk about today. Let's talk about the successes of these missionaries before 1900. Number one, we see that they established mission stations. Mission stations, they were established, so many mission stations were established in Mashonaland. They were also established in Matebeleland, at Inyati, at Hope Fountain, at Empan. Then we saw those mission stations being established in Mashingo. Mission stations were established. So we are saying that the missionaries, they were successful in the sense that mission stations were established. Number two, they incorporated what are cattle. Incorporated cattle. They treated cattle which were not well. So we are seeing that they played an important part. Animals were those animals that were not okay, they were treated by the whites. Not only that, now Africans in the Bishop, who were not feeling well, they were also treated by these whites. They went on also to print books in local languages. Bibles, they were printed in local languages. The people in Mashonaland, they could read about Jesus Christ. They could read about the good works in the Bible using their local language. The same applies to the people in Matebeleland. They also read about God in their local languages. So we are seeing books, we are seeing Bibles being printed in local language. That on its own, it was a success. They also introduced new crops. We also see them introduce new farming methods, such as shifting agriculture, shifting agriculture, the issue of contour ridges. Africans using now contours. That on its own benefited the Africans, that on its own was a success. They also introduced new craftwork that were not done by the Shona, by the Ndebele. And they brought this new craft in Mashonaland and also Matebeleland. Again, that was a success. Schools were built. We also said that hospitals were built. Hospitals, they were built in Mashigo. Hospitals were built in Matebeleland. Africans, when they were not well, I'm sick, Mulumbu, my head is aching, not okay, I'm weak. You could go to the hospital. Yes, madam, yes, baba, what's the problem? My name, my head. You were treated on those local hospitals. People were now going to schools. They started to read. Baba, Amani, go and go. People were now reading. Why? It is because of the schools that had been built. Although these are some of the notable successes that were done by the missionaries, but however, their missionary activities were not all that successful. So let's look on the failures of the missionaries in Zimbabwe. The London Missionary Society failed because both Lobengula Lobi, Mzili, they refused to be converted into Christianity. They refused to be converted into Christianity. So that on its own now it became difficult for the whites to convert the village because their leaders refused to be converted into Christianity. Another issue was that the religion of the Ndebele was so strong to the extent that it influenced the political and military organization. So the military organization, political organization was so strong that people could not have time to go and worship God. Why? They spent much of their time in the regiments. Remember, the Ndebele army, it was organized into 8 regiments. They spend much of their time in these regiments being trained. They spend much of their time in the regiments going to raid neighboring tribes. So time for these Ndebele to go and worship God, it was so difficult. So that on its own now, it became impossible for these missionaries to convert the Ndebele, so it failed. Again, the principles of Christianity threatened the social system of the Ndebele. Why? It is because these people, they believed in their ancestral spirits, Amagozi. So to bring in another religion that criticized their social way of life, now it became a challenge. So by so doing now, it was difficult for these missionaries to convert the Ndebele. Another one was that the convents, they were mistrusted in the Ndebele society. If you agreed or if you followed this new religion now, people automatically now, they no longer want are trusted you. And people had a tendency to go and report you to the king. King Lobby, King Zili, someone has been converted. So there were chances that you were going to be punished by the Ndebele kings, leaders, and later on Lord Bula. Why? Because the Ndebele were saying we don't trust this new religion because it's opposing our social ways of what are of life. So those new converts, we see that in some instances they were even punished for following this new religion that had been brought by the whites. Then we also see that Yetmen Mongobe, and these people, they were killed for showing interest in Christianity. We are seeing Yetmen Mongobe being killed, and you can imagine you are seeing another person being killed, and these people for following Christianity. What about you? Do you think you're going to be converted and follow this new religion? Obviously, you were not going to tolerate this gospel that was being preached. So we are seeing some people being killed because of following Christianity. So that on its own, it led or it became difficult for the missionaries to preach and convert the Ndebeles. We also see that Lobengula here harassed and arrested missionaries who seemed to succeed in missionary. E.g., we talked about Colliard. Those missionaries who were becoming successful in missionary, they were arrested, they were harassed. Lobengula did not want this Christianity to spread in in Zimbabwe, in Mashonaland, and also Matebeleland. The missionaries, however, on their own, they failed. Why? It is because of diseases. They were not familiar with the environment that was in Zimbabwe, in Mashonaland, and Matebeleland. They died of diseases. They were also not successful because of poor communication, both in Mashonaland and also in Matebeleland. They also failed because of lack of roads. They did not have a good transport system. Some areas did not have good roadway, good road network. So by so doing, they could not reach so many people to preach to them. So poor roadway facilities led these missionaries not to be as successful. They also were not successful because of what shortages of food that they were accustomed to. Some foods that were taken here, they were not familiar with those foods, so they don't have adequate food that they were accustomed to. So that on its own led them to fail. You cannot preach the gospel when you are hungry. So by so doing now, we say they're not being successful. Why? Because of shortages of food that they started to experience. Another one was the lack of trust from the Africans since they preached against polygamy, raiding, and also some traditional systems that we're doing, and also the custom, the caste system, that issue of classism. And lastly, we talk about the accommodation, problems. Some missionaries did not have proper accommodation to preach this gospel. They're supposed to have good accommodation, but they faced serious accommodation problems. So because of that, now their work was not all that successful. So we have looked on the successes, we have looked on the failures of the missionary activities in Zimbabwe. Thank you so much, Mr. Dr.